Hey, this is Dave Pryor. Welcome to Agile 2019. Here in the Leading Agile booth, we're going to be doing interviews all week long with speakers and thought leaders and other folks that are here attending the conference. Johanna Rothman is here. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
And when we were getting ready for the interview, I said, I'm going to talk about your book. And you said, which book? And I said, the new book. And you said, I just published one this morning or last night.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, I want to mention your talks. So you've got one today at 2 o'clock. That's on distributed teams.
Yeah. Well, it's actually the Agile Principles for any team. Because we're not going to talk about hours of overlap.
Okay.
So this is, if you have an Agile team, you should probably pay attention to these principles.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Build your modern management mindset. Adapt how you lead for Agile success. And that's what the new book is about.
Yes.
So what's the new book?
So it's actually a series of 3 books.
Okay.
The first is Manage Yourself.
Okay.
The second is Lead and Serve Others. And the third is Practical Organizational Leadership.
Okay.
Because if you look at what a manager does, if you don't manage yourself,
it's hard.
Yeah. And then what we think about management is how we lead and serve others, right?
Okay.
What do we do to other people, which is often what managers think, instead of with or for, right? So if we can change our behaviors a little bit,
right,
we can create a better environment. And then the third is the organizational leadership part is really about the Agile culture. If we really want collaborative teams, we cannot reward people.
Right.
We cannot incent single humans.
And that was one of the things in the description that kind of threw me because I read the myth of utilization and indispensable employee.
Oh, yeah.
And at first I was thinking it was dispensable employee. Like, the throwaway people, they're just like chess pieces. But you're talking about the rock stars.
Oh, God. Yeah. If I have to hear about rock star or 10X employee again, oh, please.
Right.
Yeah. Because there is no such thing. There are people who are, more capable, certainly, than I am of holding an entire system in their heads.
Right.
This is good. Right? We need them.
Until they wake up rich and don't come to work anymore.
Right. I mean, so back in the late 70s, I am an old programmer. A guy came in on the
experienced programmer.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I have the gray hair. The gray hair to prove it. One of my colleagues came in on the weekend and rewrote the entire pieces of the operating system that we needed for our instrument. This was analytical chemical instrumentation.
Okay.
Right? So FFTs, we had a command line for GUI. I kind of like the command line, so I'm an experienced programmer. Give me a command line and lights on the front of the computer.
There you go.
Yeah. So he came in, he did not leave any documentation. He excised the old part, put in the new part, and because he had worked all weekend, he took Monday morning off.
Published the whole thing too, right?
Oh yeah.
Because it works.
We couldn't go backwards. None of us knew what he had done. So the 5 of us are sitting there at our desks waiting for him to come back into work.
Yeah.
We are solely stuck. He thought he was so great. He thought he was a rock star.
And stuff that used to get rewarded.
Oh, yeah. Luckily, my boss did not reward that. And he then apologized to us. And then he only took him about an hour to walk us through what he had done. And it totally made sense. But spending 48 hours, all of Saturday, all of Sunday, doing this thing, I mean, that's... And
my experience has been that when people write code like that and don't comment it, like one of my friends who I know knows better says, well, I'd like to think my code's clear enough that anybody could,
self-documenting code. Yeah, that was a myth back when I was in college.
Okay.
It's a myth now. I mean, you read my writing. Sometimes my writing isn't self-documenting, it's English. I try. That does not mean I always succeed.
Yeah, we always assume other people understand what's inside our heads.
Right.
So I want to ask you about the management mindset thing. So you mentioned a few minutes ago that the good leaders are people that serve others, that they have to manage themselves first.
Yeah.
I've worked for a number of managers who the way that their fear and stress and chaos would show up was, I'm going to control you.
Yeah.
and I'm going to help you perform better. And it was
Yeah.
all very command driven. How do you approach that conversation? Like for the people that are watching, if they have that kind of manager and they have the opportunity to have the discussion, how would you suggest saying to somebody, look, you know what, when you do that, it's not helping me?
Exactly like that.
Okay.
Right? That's feedback. So when Esther and I wrote Behind Closed Doors, Secrets of Great Management, we
Right.
had this frame for feedback, peer-to-peer feedback. So the manager might be higher in the organization in terms of hierarchy,
Yeah.
but the manager is a person, right? I think that if we could all just understand, managers are human beings.
Yeah.
And we have, as a manager, I tell the story in the book about my very worst manager day when I was totally offensive to
Okay.
this guy who came in. Because I think that people need to see, while I practice, I'm not always perfect.
Yeah.
And as people, we are not perfect about anything. We can practice to make better. So if we understand our behaviors
Right.
and we understand the effects of our behaviors, we can then make a choice. Now,
Okay.
is this choice difficult to make? Oh, yes. I mean, your personal integrity is at stake anytime you go to work. And as a manager, I would say it's actually magnified.
Okay. And every interaction.
Every interaction.
So if I'm a manager and I want to establish that peer-to-peer relationship, I mean, I've had a bunch of people that work for me and people I even mentor that when I say to them, look, we have to be equals here. That's the only way this works. So I want to be open with you and I
Yeah.
expect you to be open with me. A lot of people hear the words, but don't get the sense of safety or freedom that they need to be able to do, or they just can't coach themselves into saying like, well, look, here's the thing that sucks that's happening.
So I haven't written the part about courage yet.
Okay.
I think that when we bring, oh God, I'm going to say this phrase, our whole selves to work.
Sound like Olaf.
God. Okay. So I'll talk about
When you
why
show
that-
up.
When you show up, it takes courage to actually go to work every day.
Yeah.
Because to be a human in the workforce, we need to show our vulnerability and our capability. They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you read my Create Adaptable Life blog.
Yeah.
I'm totally vulnerable on that blog. I just tell people what it is. I'm always whining about something that happened to me with my vertigo. I use it as an example because when I show people my vulnerability, and my vulnerability is totally obvious. I mean, I use a rollator to walk,
Yeah.
right? Right. I look like a little old lady. And if
But a
I,
very spry little old lady.
Thank you. Yeah, I walk fast because I have the rollator. But when we bring what makes us vulnerable, the flip side of that is actually our courage, and we can then be the best humans we can be.
Okay.
And that's really what I mean when I say that horrible phrase of bringing our best selves to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say vulnerable, the part where I always get caught with that is there are people that I know in service of that, their level of vulnerability is almost like a weapon.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not like an intentional thing. It's
No.
just like, I'm going to come and explode my life at you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
actually not
what we're
courageous
talking
either.
about.
So I'm using the frame of congruence,
Okay.
which is self-other context.
Okay. How does that?
So if you only think about yourself and you ignore the other person, then when they do something bad, you blame them.
Yeah.
That finger of blame. Yeah, I go there. If you say I am nothing and you are everything, then you placate.
Uh-huh.
I'm not very good at placating,
Okay.
but I am extremely good at blaming.
Okay.
Well, we each have our own strengths.
Yeah.
And then the context is what brings everybody together. So if you ignore the context, then whatever you're doing just doesn't make sense. And if you only think about the context, you're being super reasonable. Well, studies say we should get 10x more productivity, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, does that happen here with these humans? Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the organization is filled with human beings. And instead of saying, let's make something by the book and let's
Right.
make it in a nice grid. I grew up in Boston, in southeastern Massachusetts. We don't have a grid. We don't have any. I mean, all the people from the Midwest. I married a guy from Minneapolis. When he moved to Boston, he said, "Where's the grid?" I said, "There's 7 streets in downtown Boston on a grid. 7x4 or something.
Yeah.
That's a grid." He said, "No, you mean like miles?" I said, no, we don't do that on the East Coast.
We didn't figure that out until we got to the middle of the country.
Yeah, we don't do that. So organizations are, I'm not sure that they're like cowpaths like Boston, but organizations are filled with humans with great strengths and talents and capabilities and all the messiness that comes with that. Right? So, I mean, you have people who are differently abled, as I am,
right.
And if you put the cubes together so much that people like me cannot get through with a rollator, that's kind of offensive.
Yeah.
That's not thinking of the other. Mm-hmm. That's thinking of, well, the architect said, right, this is super reasonable. The architect said we could get all these cubes in here. Well, never mind that cubes are like a pox upon the universe. But all of this stuff occurs in the organization. And if we are not taking note of the fact that we are human
and we're in a
thinking
system
about
together.
our congruence and our system together, then we cannot have any dignity, any respect, any courage, any empathy.
So you've got to be kind to yourself and kind to the other.
Yeah.
And how can you rise up together?
And I think a lot of this with congruence is that when we build our personal integrity,
right,
especially as managers, that gives us the courage to then take the next step.
Okay. So I have right here, you guys can't see it, but on my notes, personal integrity with a big question mark next to it. Because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. So can you explain what you mean by that and how that relates to somebody in the workforce?
So a lot of us as managers have been asked to do something shady by our employers. Mm-hmm. And the first time this happened to me, I was a director level. I was not even a manager.
Okay.
And project managers actually get this all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So project managers are really in the zone.
We know about the gray.
Oh, God, yes. And they asked me to sign a piece of paper that said that I had personally verified this system. I said, I just came out of a meeting with the operations committee where I explained all of the big problems we had and that we were not meeting our release criteria, and I recommended we did not release. So are you saying you want me to release and sign something that says it's good? And my CEO said, yes, that's exactly what I want.
Okay.
And I said, no, I'm not doing it. He said, your job is at risk.
Yeah.
I said, okay. Are we done here?
But see, that's very brave. And a lot of people, for whatever economic reason or whatever
I mean,
reason,
if you have
they would
healthcare
feel,
through your employer, I mean, that's a scary thing. When you see a bully, if you stand up to the bully, you almost always win. Mm-hmm. And my CEO was trying to bully me. He was afraid. He was afraid for many, many reasons.
And somebody may have been bullying him.
So we had this one customer who wanted the product, was 90% of our revenue.
Yeah.
We were in big trouble. We were in huge trouble. So when I said to him, I didn't know about the rule of 3 then. I had not yet read enough of Jerry's writing, and I hadn't yet worked with Jerry Weinberg. But I said, don't we have any alternatives? And he said, no. And I said, but I've been talking to this guy as a program manager, right? My peer at the customer. So he was a program manager. I was a program manager. And I said, we have trust. If I talk to him and explain where we are, and then we need a week to fix this and a week to fix that, and then we actually focus people on the stuff that we really need to fix, we will have something in 2 weeks that is good enough for what they need. He said, really? I said, well, you can't ask them to do anything else. I need all 70 people to work on this thing. And he said, really? I mean, it had never occurred to him
that it was possible to fix
that
it.
to even talk to anybody in the customer organization.
And if you had signed it when it collapsed, then it would have been you that it fell back on.
I would have been personally liable.
Yeah. I had a gig where I wasn't as brave as you. And when I left that company, I was getting turned out of job interviews for years just because that company's name was on my resume. So that's, I mean, to what you were just saying, I think one of the things that's important to consider is if you're going to stay in the field, you create a history, and all those moments build up that reputation. And the company you're working at, you might not be there forever, but your reputation is going to follow you wherever you go.
Well, and that's why your personal integrity is so, so important at any level in the organization. And this is not something you bang over people's heads. That's not it at all. It's how do you feel inside? How does this action make you feel? If it makes you feel as if you have to placate somebody, you're not being congruent. If you're thinking about ignoring the rest of the humans in the room, yeah. So I think it's really important to say, how do we act in every single moment? Now, you might be asking, how can we be perfect? You cannot.
We don't have to be perfect, but you're talking about being
perfect.
really present in a way that a lot of people, when they get hijacked, they can't.
Oh yeah, I mean,
which we all do.
Oh God, yes. I mean, isn't the amygdala the fight or flight? There's all these things that happen
in your brain.
Yeah. The brain is a wonderful organ. Yeah. So, yeah. But our brains do stuff to us all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So how have you, I mean, especially with the health stuff, how have you taught yourself to develop that presence, that awareness? Like, to me, I always think, like, when a batter's hitting the ball, the decision is made before the ball leaves the pitcher's hand, but there's something in their brain slows that event down. Like, how do you slow it down so that you can check in with yourself and see what's going on and realize?
So I think that there are a couple things. One is, are there personal lines you will not cross? Right? So I don't knowingly lie to people.
Okay.
I sometimes end up lying because I didn't know. I thought I had this data. It was really that data. I told them something wrong. Oh, I made a mistake. Right? But if you also can then admit that you make mistakes and you say, how can I be as truthful as possible given the situation and the information in hand?
Yeah.
Now that's a way to really start. And how can I treat people fairly? Not the same way for every single person, because everyone is different. Right. Everyone needs something different. But how can I be fair in my dealings?
And be of service, which you mentioned that too. Yeah. How can I live my life in service of other people?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So this is great. I want to mention something about your distributed teams book too.
Okay, good.
I'm going to ask you a question about it in a second, but if you're watching this, there's a book with a really long title, From Chaos to Successful Distributed Agile Teams.
Yeah.
There's more to it too that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, collaborate to deliver.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I've been telling people about this book is what happened to me when I read it was I'd read something. I was like, oh, wow, okay, there's a great answer for a question I couldn't answer, but they'll never have an answer for this. 2 pages later, I'm like, damn it. Like kept finding that you were answering these impossible questions. And I'm wondering if there's something that you left out of the book that you wish everybody knew about making distributed agile teams click.
Is there something I left out of the book? So Mark and I did.
Mark Kilby.
Mark Kilby. Yeah,
Mark
Kilby and I. Oh, good. Mark Kilby and I pair wrote that entire book, and we have probably, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 words of stuff we did not put in.
Okay.
We have a bunch of myths and traps, and we already had traps in the book. I think that we tried to make the book inviting to managers.
Okay.
And the biggest problem I see in distributed agile teams is that they don't have enough hours of overlap, and they still want to use an agile approach. And we tried to be as nice as possible to the managers and say, we don't advise this, and look at the cycle time and look at the delays and all that stuff. Don't do it. That's my advice. Don't do it. If you don't have at least 4 hours of overlap, don't do it. Don't use an agile approach. You can use an iterative life cycle. You can use an incremental life cycle. Don't use something that demands all-time collaboration. Don't do it.
If you're not going to provide the environment where it can happen.
Yeah. So I have a client with developers in New York and testers in Singapore. they thought that this was an excellent idea.
Well, you get 24 hours.
Well, yeah, and then you have 24 hours of delay when the testers have a question and the developers are not in yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's leading you back to waterfall anyway.
Yeah. So, and you can still work in feature sets, right?
Right.
I've been a fan of feature-driven development approaches for years and years and years because I am a simple person. I understand features. I don't understand functionality.
Okay.
I just don't, right? I thought I was a bad developer because I could not imagine the entire system at the beginning.
Right.
I had to see what the features were and implement some features, and then I could figure it out.
How to put the rest of the pieces
Yeah,
in.
for a lot of things, I'm a top-down thinker, but for a bunch of things, I'm really a bottom-up thinker.
Okay.
I really do that. So, so that's the one thing we left out of the book, and Mark might have a different answer, so it'll be interesting. Yeah, but the answer is if you have not enough hours of overlap, and we think it's at least 4, don't use an agile approach.
And I want to try to mansplain this to the camera for a second. So
good.
Everybody who asks about distributed teams wants to know about how do they deal with, like, we're in the US and India, how do we have this thing?
Right.
And your and Mark's suggestion is there has to be 4 hours of overlap.
Yes.
So that the teams can sync up and coordinate.
Yes. For an agile approach.
Yeah.
If you don't care about an agile approach. So I have a client.
Sorry, they're setting up for lunch and they're just dragging metal across the floor.
Oh well. I have a client who's based in various U.S. time zones.
Okay.
And they have a vendor in India that they have worked with for years and years and years. They know these people.
Yeah.
And the way they do it now is they have architects in the U.S. design the system, and then the people in India implement it. And there's a little bit of back and forth. And I said, is that working for you? Are you getting stuff in the time that you need? They said, yes. I said, great. Don't change it.
Leave it be.
Don't change it. This is not, you are not going to use an agile approach for this. This is not an agile approach. It's working for you. You know these people. You trust them. They deliver for you. Don't mess with that part.
But yeah, and so you don't have to be agile. You don't have to do agile. It's not right for everything.
And they said, well, we really want to manage the project portfolio in an agile way. I said, fine, make the deliverables smaller. Right?
Okay.
So you can, I kind of did this with a waterfall organization. I said, you have to deliver something every month. I don't care how you go about doing it, but you have to deliver something every single month. And it took them a couple of months to learn how to do that. And they did it in a waterfall way. They really did design up front. They did requirements. Oh, let's not even talk about the requirements. They did the design up front. They did the developers coded, the testers tested afterwards, but they delivered something finished at the end of that month.
That's a good start then.
That was fine.
Yeah.
Right? So you can do that, and that will allow you to manage the project portfolio in a more agile way because you have a deliverable every month.
And I mean, maybe at a different level, as long as they're inspecting and adapting and delivering value, who cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was awesome. So thank you very much for coming by.
Thank you.
Would people want to check out your books, where do you want them to go? Because I know you publish them in a number of places.
So except for the mindset books, which is Modern Management Made Easy.
Okay.
Yeah. And those 3 are only on LeanPub right now because they're in progress. So if you don't like in progress books, don't read them.
So this is another thing. When she writes them, she puts them on LeanPub and people can offer feedback and you keep inspecting and adapting.
Yeah, because I'm kind of an agile kind of a person. Yeah. And everything else is wide. You can buy the ebook, the print book everywhere.
Okay.
I have some audiobooks. I don't have everything in audio yet.
Okay.
I am working on taking over the universe.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming by. This was
you.
great. So today at 2:00, if you're here at the conference, is the presentation about 7 principles for any effective agile team. And tomorrow at 2:00 is Build Your Modern Management Mindset.
Yes.
Right? And your website, URL?
jrothman.com.
jrothman.com.
Yes. So that's the main site. That's where all the professional stuff is. And createadaptablelife.com is the personal essays.
All right, cool. Thank you very much for coming by.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference. And if you're watching, keep checking back because we're going to be doing these interviews all week long here at Agile 2019. Thanks.